All right, today we are diving into one of the wildest, most visually intense, and let's be honest, just plain bizarre prophecies in the entire Old Testament. This is a story that isn't just about words, it's about actions. You could even call it a kind of divine performance art, with a message that was absolutely terrifying. And it all comes from the book of Ezekiel, chapter 4. Seriously, think about it. Maybe you were told to file papers in a color-coded system that made no sense, or do some task that felt totally random. Well, I'm willing to bet it was nothing compared to the job description God gave to the prophet Ezekiel. He wasn't just asked to deliver a message, he was commanded to become a living, breathing symbol, a public spectacle for his fellow exiles in Babylon, all to warn them about the destruction of Jerusalem. So this whole prophecy plays out in three distinct acts. And the first one, it's all about a silent, very detailed construction project. See, God didn't just tell Ezekiel what was going to happen. He made him build a scale model of it, right out in the open, where everybody could see. And the details here are just incredible. Ezekiel is told to grab a simple clay brick, an adobe brick, and literally carve a map of Jerusalem on it. Then he has to build a miniature siege around his model city. We're talking tiny siege ramps, camps for the invading army, and even little battering rams. He is literally creating a silent diorama of total war. You have to ask, why an adobe brick? I mean, of all things. Well, it's because adobe, which is just mud and straw, is a really humble, fragile material. It's not like stone. It's weak. And that choice was a brilliant visual way to show that Jerusalem, for all its pride and its big walls, was actually incredibly vulnerable and fragile in God's eyes. Now, for the people watching Ezekiel do this was not just some weird art project. A siege was the most terrifying thing they could imagine. It meant being trapped, surrounded, with no food, no water, slowly being starved into surrender or death. This silent performance was a crystal-clear, horrifying prediction of the actual Babylonian siege of Jerusalem that would start in 588 BC. And then, just when you think it can't get any weirder, God adds one final, chilling detail. He tells Ezekiel to take an iron cooking plate and set it up like a wall, right between himself and the model city he just built. So what's up with this iron wall? Oh, it is packed with meaning. That iron represents the hard, unbending, unstoppable nature of God's judgment. It's a symbol for the wall of sin the people had built between themselves and God. It was a visual declaration that God had turned his face away. He wasn't going to listen to their prayers for help. The judgment was final, period. And that brings us to Act 2. You know, if building the tiny city under siege was strange, what God commanded Ezekiel to do next was just an unbelievable feat of physical endurance. He had to literally, physically embody the weight of his people's sin. For 390 days, Ezekiel was ordered to lie on his left side, and each one of those days represented 1 year of sin for the northern kingdom of Israel. And he wasn't done. As soon as that was over, he had to roll onto his right side for another 40 days, with each day representing a year of sin for the southern kingdom of Judah. So for 430 days straight, his own body became a living calendar of his people's rebellion. When he was on his left side, he faced north toward the old kingdom of Israel. On his right, he faced south toward Judah and Jerusalem. He was physically bearing the entire timeline of their disobedience. Just think about that. And just in case he got any ideas about, getting up and stretching his legs, the text says God literally put bonds on him to hold him in place. This wasn't just for show. It was a powerful symbol that the coming judgment was just as inescapable for the people of Jerusalem as these ropes were for Ezekiel. There was no getting out of it. Okay, now for the third and final act. And believe it or not, this is where things get even more visceral. While he's tied down, lying on his side day after day, Ezekiel also has to act out the grim reality of life during a siege, and it all centers on the most basic human need: food.
God gives him a very specific recipe for bread. He has to mix together wheat, barley, beans, lentils, millet, and spelt. Now, this isn't some ancient multigrain health loaf. The whole point was to show utter scarcity. See, when things are good, you make bread with good flour. But when you're starving, you just throw whatever you can find. Good grains, animal feed, whatever, into the mix just to have something to eat. It was a symbol of total degradation.
And the amount he was allowed to eat was tiny. His daily food ration was about 230 grams. That's about the weight of a deck of cards or a small apple. And his water? Just over half a liter. That's it for the entire day. He was performing a daily ritual of extreme hunger and thirst for everyone to see. And then comes the most shocking, most stomach-turning instruction of them all. Ezekiel, who was a priest and deeply committed to ritual purity, was commanded to bake this bread of suffering over a fire fueled by human waste. This was the ultimate symbol of defilement and humiliation, showing how Israel would be forced to eat unclean food among the nations they were exiled to. And at this command, Ezekiel just breaks. After all this is his line in the sand, he cries out to God, "No, Lord God, I've never defiled myself my entire life. I've never eaten anything impure." For him, as a priest, this command was a violation of his deepest identity and his lifelong faithfulness. And what happens next is just fascinating. In a moment of incredible dialogue, God listens. He shows mercy. He says, "Okay, you can use cow dung for your fire instead." Now, this was still really unpleasant, and it was still a symbol of poverty, but it was a common fuel in that part of the world, and, crucially, it wasn't considered ritually defiling. It's this amazing moment that shows that even in the middle of judgment, God still listens to the pleas of the righteous.
So, after all that, the model siege, the 430 days on the floor, the starvation diet, the unclean cooking, what's the bottom line? What are we supposed to take away from this incredibly elaborate and disturbing performance art?
Well, a few things really stand out. First, it shows that sin has real, tangible, destructive consequences. The suffering Ezekiel acted out wasn't arbitrary. It was the direct result of the nation's choices. Second, we see a God who is both just and merciful. The judgment was non-negotiable, but he still heard Ezekiel's personal cry for help. And finally, it shows that your personal righteousness actually matters. Even while the nation as a whole was being judged, God saw and honored Ezekiel's individual faithfulness.
In the end, Ezekiel's entire mission leaves us with a really powerful question that still hits home today. He was tasked with delivering this message of absolute doom, but he did it with his entire being, even arguing with God to protect his own integrity. And it makes you wonder, right? In our own lives, when we have to share a difficult truth with someone, how do we find that balance between being brutally honest and showing the kind of compassion that proves we actually care? That's definitely something worth thinking about.